Good morning and welcome to another edition of Asian Nation. I am so glad you've joined us for our get-togethers. We are in our Zoom studio for the Asian Nation today. They're building out our brand new high-tech studio, and we should be in it within the next week or two, so make sure you tune in every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. And next Tuesday, hopefully, we will, 1 week from today, we'll be in our brand new studio, not here in the Zoom studio, and we'll be able to give you a tour of our high-tech new Asian Nation studio. So that'll be a week from today, next Tuesday. Before we get into the program today, and I'm not a big, I don't beat people up when they don't take the flu shot. I'm not beating people up when they're not taking the COVID shot, but I do want to give a little plug for the COVID shot because I'm a proponent of the vaccine. If you are teetering on the fence, my suggestion is to listen to the one and only person that you trust, and that would be your medical advisor, your doctor, the person that you trust, that's your primary care physician. And when that person, when he or she tells you to do something, make an informed decision and go with that, because you'll have every single one of us is now a COVID vaccine expert. Everybody that's got the vaccine is a COVID vaccine expert. And you'll hear 100 different stories about the vaccine and the side effects and the this and the that. I got to tell you, for me, my personal decision was the side effects of the vaccine far outweighed the risks of the uncertainties of COVID itself. As some of you know, I lost a first cousin in Beaumont, Texas on Christmas Eve to COVID. The disease is real, and there's no guarantee. I had a friend of mine the other day said, well, I've already had COVID, and I know how it affected me, and if I get it again, it'll affect me the same way, so I'm not going to get the vaccine. And my question to her was, do you really know if one of these variants is going to affect you the same exact way? So there's too many unknowns about the virus for me not to have taken the vaccine. But you have everybody becomes a vaccine expert. So what I did was I called my doctor, and I said, okay, I'm hearing all these scary stories about the vaccine. Do I take it or not? He goes, absolutely take it. So I did some work, so I've taken. I've got both of them. You're not fully vaccinated until the second, maybe the second week after your second vaccine, or in the case of the Johnson & Johnson, the second week after you take the vaccine. I went did some work over at behind Bon Marché, off of Lobdell in Florida. There's the Bon Carré Business Center, and behind the Cox facility, there's a mass vaccination site set up. National Guard's in town. Government's paying for it. They'll be here for 2 months, and they work. They vaccinate people 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Tuesday through Sunday. They're off on Mondays, and the turnout there has been very disappointing. And it's so easy. I was out there Saturday, and you drive up, and they fill out your paperwork and your form. Then they move you to this line. You get your shot. They move you to this line. You wait 15 minutes, and you're out of there. Total time in half an hour because it hasn't been well attended, if you will. The turnout's been very, very disappointing. So if you are on the fence about the vaccine, I've taken both of them. I know a lot of people that have taken them and had no problem. My 86-year-old mom in Beaumont, Texas, took both vaccines, and other than a sore arm, she was fine. So if you're looking for a place, you don't need to pre-register, by the way, for this drive-through facility in the back of the Cox facility on at Bon Carré Business Center off of Lobdell. Just drive up, no appointment necessary. You'll be in and out, and you'll feel more comfortable that you've been vaccinated. So that's my spiel on the vaccine. Today's show is a show that's a topic you'll also need to be. It's an individual thing. The vaccine's an individual thing for people. You got to be comfortable with it, and you're not going to get folks that have the vaccine shouldn't be beating up people that haven't had the vaccine. Just it's an individual thing. So is organ donation. And last month, April, was organ donation, organ procure month, and organ donation month. And I wanted to speak to, I'm an organ donor, as are many of you, and I wanted to do a little plug today for organ donation because I met a wonderful lady many years ago. Her name is Wendy Lipsey, and Wendy has received 3 organs in her life and would not be alive today for it not being for organ donors. So I have her on the program today. We're also going to talk to someone with the Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency, LOPA, and that'll be toward the end of the broadcast. But right now I want to introduce you to Wendy Lipsey. Wendy, first of all, good morning, and how are you?
Oh, I'm great. I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure you were talking to me. I am doing great. Never better.
Wendy Lipsey and I met through her son, Luke, who had a Popsicle ministry. Still does, right?
Yes. They kind of shut it down during
sure.
COVID, so, but hopefully we'll be picking it up again really soon.
And what is this Popsicle ministry called?
It's called Luke's Popsicle Pals. And Luke would, after I had which you'll hear the story, my second transplant, the only thing I really could eat that didn't make me sick was a popsicle, and it always put a smile on my face. And Luke thought, well, heck, if that puts a smile on my mom's face, what would bringing popsicles of all different flavors to Children's Hospital do for children? Let's put a smile on their face. So that's where it kind of kicked off about a little over 5 years ago.
And you and I kept in touch since then, and I got to know your story, and it just fascinated me. I've always been an organ donor and actually never really knew a recipient, and never really knew anyone that had given an organ, or a family member had given an organ. So it fascinated me to get, and I'm even more animate about organ donation and to this day. But your story just fascinated me. This is not going to be a visit where we're going to be sad. I wanted to tell the viewer that right now. This is a happy ending story, as are many of these type of stories. But your story is incredible because it's not very common, I don't think, to have an organ fail after you get it donated to you, and then you have to have another donation. So we're going to start way back at the beginning. You were 18 years old when you got diagnosed, but you had problems and challenges up until that point. But it was 20 years after your 18th birthday that you actually needed your first transplant. So take me back to 18, the diagnosis. What in the world was it? And take me from that day forward, briefly.
Okay. I kind of lived a sickly childhood, on and in and out of doctor's appointments. I kind of had to miss a lot of school because I just always had sore throats and earaches and just bizarre infections. And finally, when I was a senior in high school, I just really wasn't feeling well. And my mom's like, all right, it's time for you to go to the doctor and we need to find out. So she took me to a gastroenterologist, and he did blood work, and my liver enzymes came back very elevated. So he wanted to do a liver biopsy. So we did a liver biopsy, and he was a little shocked, and he was like, you're not going to believe this. He goes, but you have a very rare liver disease called primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is a narrowing of the bile ducts. The bile ducts get clogged up by scar tissue. And when that happens, bile can't excrete through the liver. So with that being said, he said, you're going to need procedures, every now and then, like they go endoscopy, where they go down your throat and go in with like and dilate your bile ducts. But one day you're going to need a liver transplant. Well, this was 1988, and transplant then wasn't what it is now. You don't hear about it. You didn't hear about it every day like most people hear about it now, or stories, or it's in the movies, or, you just didn't hear about it. So with that being said, one day was a long time away in my brain. So I went off to college in Georgia, living my life to the fullest. Then I moved to St. Simon's Island in Georgia for the summer, and I was an athletic director, which was really weird because I don't do sports. So I don't really know how that happened. And then I was a hostess in the evening at a hotel restaurant. But anyway, I just wasn't feeling well. I became jaundiced. My eyes were yellow. I was vomiting blood. My stomach was swelling up from fluid. And I called my parents and said, I don't think I'm doing well. I think y'all need to come here and get me. So they called the doctor. The doctor made the calls needed, and my parents came and got me, and we drove to Duke University Medical Center in North Carolina, where I had a procedure. And this procedure is what held me for 20 plus years until that one day came that I needed a transplant.
That is just incredulous. So, and in those 20 years, you were still having challenges, I'm thinking. Now, was this illness something that was from birth, or is it something you inherited? Can your son Luke inherit this?
No, they don't really know 100%. I mean, we're not sure if I was born with it. And the doctors have said to this day that seems like it was more of a virus that happened to settle in my liver. So maybe when I was growing up, I had some infection or virus, and it settled in my liver and caused this craziness. It's not hereditary. It is not hereditary. Thank goodness, because it is a disease that just progresses over time. It never gets better. Medicine doesn't really make it better. The end result is death, unfortunately, or a transplant.
Wow.
If someone get it in time.
So walk me through this. You get on the transplant list, and you were told the transplant, a donor liver would be available in what kind of time frame?
They can't really give you a time frame because there's really no. But in 2007, I was placed on the transplant list at Ochsner, New Orleans, which they are amazing at what they do, top notch. They're number one in liver transplants in the country. I mean, that is where you go. They told me it could be anywhere from 2 weeks that they would call me to 2 years, 3 years. Like, you don't know when your call is coming in. I always had to make sure I had my cell phone on me. You always answer the phone because you don't know what number they're going to be calling from or who's calling. So you always had your phone on you. And that was in 2007. And when the doctor sent me home that day that I was listed, they literally, the nurse said to me, if I were you, I'd go home and pack your suitcase because you could get a call in 2 days. Like, we're not saying you will, but you need to be prepared. So I did just that. And I waited 2 long years. And in 2009, I finally got that call. And I'll never forget that call, Johnny, because it called me at 10 o'clock at night and said, and by the way, through this 2 years of waiting, I was very sick. I have a son who was 7 years old when I was put on the transplant list. So I'm trying to raise a son, and I'm just trying to be a normal mom, as normal as I can be, But so I packed my suitcase, but when I got the call at 10 o'clock from Ochsner, and they said, we have a liver for you, but get some rest. We're going to call you in a few hours and let you know for sure to make sure it's a match. So finally at 1 a.m., the phone rang, and it was Ochsner. And they said, come down to Ochsner as soon as you can get here. We have a liver for you. And by this time, I was number one in the state for a liver, and I was number one at Ochsner. I was the sickest and in need. But I'll never forget getting up and grabbing my suitcase and looking in my suitcase from 2 years ago at all the pajamas and the sweatsuits I'd packed. I had lost so much weight that these things that I'd packed 2 years earlier were going to be too big on me. Like, I needed new things, didn't think about it. I just brought them with me. But I'll never forget my son waking up from a dead sleep and walking in the kitchen, and he was rubbing his eyes, and my in-laws were on their way to stay with Luke while my ex-husband, then at the time my husband, went to Oxnard, and he was like, what's going on? What's all the noise? And this is at like 1:30 now. And I looked at him and I said, Luke, Mom is getting a liver transplant. They called me. I'm on my way. And he always knew what was going on. I had to always be very real with him. I didn't want to hide anything from him because I don't like when somebody hides things from me. So we had that conversation many a times. If I'm going to, living and death, we've had this conversation. But I'll never forget, he looked at me in the eyes like I'm running around the house, and he goes, Mom, like, stop, Mom. Am I ever going to see you again? Like I wasn't prepared, but I was prepared. And I said, oh my goodness, Mom, Luke, you're going to have a new and improved mom. We're going to get to do all the things we've never done. Like, I'm going to get a new and improved liver. And with that and a big hug and kiss, I had to hurry up and get to Oxnard, and we got there. And the next day I had a liver transplant. It was like 11-hour surgery. And I was alive and well and grateful. And also in that, I remember a couple days after my transplant, I didn't tell you this before, the head of the transplant department, my doctor, George Loss, amazing man, came in my room and was checking me out. And my son had come to visit. And my son, like 7-year-old little kid, walks up to the doctor at the end of my bed, tugged on his lab coat and tugs on him and said, you gave me my mom back. And for that, I thank you. I'll never forget it. It was like it happened yesterday. And he was you gave me my mom back. And for that, I thank you. And that's how Luke saw it,
That's so much for a little guy at 7 years old to take in this whole thing. And I'm sure through his growing up years, between birth and 7, he had known you to be a sickly mom.
Sickly, but I hid it really well. Like, I wasn't like the kind that was like laying in bed, oh, go get me something. Like,
But he always knew there was an issue.
What's that?
He always kind of knew there was an issue.
He knew.
Yeah.
He knew.
So you get the liver transplant, and by the way, you sent me a picture of your donor. Is it common? Christian. Is it common? We're looking at him right now. Is it common to know your donor's family?
Yes and no. It's up to the recipient to write that letter. It's that letter. It's a little uncomfortable, but it's that because you want to thank the donor's family for their choice and their, family members' decision to say yes to organ donation. So most recipients write a letter. You don't know where you're sending it. You send it to Family Services at LOPA, and you don't know the name. So it's like, dear donor family, how can I thank you enough for the gift of life? Like, how do you thank somebody for that gift? You write the letter, you send it to LOPA. LOPA knows who your donor is, family, and they send it on. So I did just that. And it was around Thanksgiving time in 2010. It was like a year after my transplant, because you need time to process what has happened to you. You deal with a little bit of something called survivor's guilt, that you're alive and well, but someone had to die in order for you to live. They were going to die with or without the gift of donation. So you have to process that before you can write that letter. I mean, you really do. You need time to process what your feelings are. So I wrote that letter, and it was around Thanksgiving time, and I heard back from my donor's mother right away. The nicest lady you ever met. She told me all about her son, Christian, and his choice when he went to the DMV when he was 16 to get his driver's license, that he wanted to be an organ donor. He loved playing the guitar. He loved music. So I got to know her pretty well. And then I said, I'd love to meet you. So I grabbed Lori Steele, Community Educator of LOPA, you've met, and we drove down to Lafayette to have lunch with her and her husband, and I brought them some beautiful lavender roses, in honor of Christian, and we gave each other a big hug, a big embrace, and it was a lovely meal, and I still keep in touch with her. I text her every single year to the date of the anniversary of Christian's passing and the day that I got a second chance at life.
That is amazing. So now, did the condition that you had that caused your original liver failure cause the transplant liver to fail, or was it something different?
No, we really think it was, it could have, there's just so many factors that go into a transplant, like antigens matching up, blood type. Obviously, the first thing they do is look for blood type. But in kidney transplant, not necessarily all of the antigens have to match up. Let's say there's I could be wrong. Let's say there's 6 antigens. Maybe 4 out of the 6 match up so they can transplant. We don't know. Possibly that it might not have been all the perfect antigens, but it did help me live pretty healthy, great life for 5 years.
And then you started feeling sick again, and I guess you got a little anxious or nervous that, wow, is something going on with the new liver?
Right. Yeah. So that was in 2014. And during that time, it was a, crazy time. I was going through a divorce. I decided I wanted to sell my house and build a new one. I wanted to start over with Luke. And within 2 weeks, I got an offer asking on the house, and they were ready to move in. So I'm like, wow. So I moved out. We had to move in with my parents because the house that I was building wasn't ready yet. I had a kidney stone issues, and I had to be go in for surgery. And when I woke up from surgery, I realized I just wasn't seeing like I used to. My vision was off. And after lots of studies and MRIs of my brain and stuff, I'd lost my peripheral vision. And they think that I had a stroke in the middle of my kidney stone surgery because my blood pressure had gone so high because I was in so much pain. So anyway, with that going on, I did notice that I wasn't feeling well. I was kind of felt sick. I was nauseous. Had a lot of confusion. And we didn't know why. I was itchy, which is the side that you have something called, I can't even think of the word, pruritus, like itching. That means your bile is backing up in your liver. I had some of the same livery symptoms, but I didn't know what it was. And I kind of knew, but I didn't even want to, I was in total denial. There is no way anything's wrong with me. So then I'm noticing that my eyeballs are kind of yellow again. So I just started wearing big sunglasses. I started losing my hair. It was thinning out, and I was extremely malnourished. I was losing a lot of weight, and finally got in touch with my doctor at Oxford, New Orleans. They said, you need to come down. You got to do some blood work. Did some testing, and he said, your liver is not doing well. We need to put you in the hospital, do whatever we can, the steroid treatment, everything we can do to try to revive that liver. So they tried everything, and nothing was working. So I was in and out of the hospital, very sick. But my son was like driving me. He just gotten his driver's license or his permit, and he was the one driving me back and forth from New Orleans to Baton Rouge. And then one night I got really, really ill, and my son ended up bringing me. My parents happened to be on a business trip in Vegas. They had to take the red eye home. I was in the hospital, and the doctors were, my parents got there, they said, you're in organ failure. You're in liver failure. And we are going to have to put you back on the liver transplant waiting list. And I was just, so many emotions going on. But in the meantime, while this was all going on, I had developed something which I didn't know I had, called hepatic, meaning liver, brain encephalopathy. All the toxins from my liver had gone to my brain, which meant my ammonia level was very high. So I had confusion. I couldn't make a complete sentence. I couldn't text because I didn't know how to spell. When I would run the hot water to take a bath, it didn't occur to me to turn on cold water. So I could be getting in a tub full of scalding hot water, and I really couldn't tell you the difference. Like, it was really bad. So I go and get admitted to the hospital, and they did a lot of blood work. And after a few good days of testing, the doctor came in the room, and my parents were in there, and my son, and said, we don't have good news. I was in ICU, had oxygen. I was connected. I had tubes in my neck. Everywhere you can imagine there was a tube coming out of, there was. And the doctor goes, we don't have good news. Not only do you need a liver transplant, but you need a kidney transplant. And I couldn't really react and say, what do you mean? Because I had the brain encephalopathy. So my mom's like, she doesn't have any kidney problems. She had kidney stones. She's fine. And the doctor said all the toxins that went from her liver have gone to her kidney. And that's what's also gone to her brain. And they were scared it was going to spread to other organs. And the doctors had said, she doesn't get a liver and a kidney within the next 72 hours. They were looking at my data like they weren't just saying this lightly. All of my data and the way I was declining so rapidly. Johnny, I was 45 years old and I weighed 68 pounds. Very malnourished. And so if I didn't get a donor within 72 hours, they weren't sure I was going to make it.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. So not now you need a kidney and a liver, and you waited 2 years on the last one. This time you got 72 hours, give or take, and that could mean your life. So what in the world happened? I know from what little I know through my limited association with LOPA, the Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency, a lot of things like a Rubik's Cube have to come together at the same time in order to get a donor organ in your body. And now you need 2 in 72 hours. So, wow, how in the world did that happen? And did your second liver and your first kidney come from the same donor?
Yes. So I don't know what goes on necessarily on the other end with the doctors, but you're on a list like the the big list that matches up to all other transplant hospitals all around. And like the sickest people are, listed first, the ones that priority, like that have to get it, or they are not going to live the next day kind of a thing. I was on that list, and the doctors were letting all the other centers know we've got somebody that needs a liver and kidney ASAP. So next thing I know, the doctor comes running in the room, and he had his cell phone in his hand, and he's on his phone, and I wasn't talking a lot, so I couldn't really communicate. And he's poking around my stomach. I really didn't even know what he was doing. And he's on the phone saying, yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, we have more room than I thought. All right. I'll see you in a little bit. He was on the phone with another transplant center. They had found a match, a liver and a kidney, and he wanted to see the donor. Had to be a small person because I was very small. Like somebody had to have a small enough liver and like a small enough frame and kidney to fit in a little person like me. And the doctor was feeling around to make sure that was going to be a right match and fit for me. And with that, he said, we have found a liver and kidney. Told my mom, we found a liver and kidney. I've got to go out of state, out of region, which meant it wasn't coming from like Louisiana. They were either going to Texas or Georgia, flying to get it. This was at 11 o'clock in the morning. And he said, but surgery will be at 8 o'clock tonight. So with that, my mom said, I'm going to call the family. My son had gone back to school. My dad brought him back, and she was calling my sister and my nieces and said, I'm going to have them come and be here before 8 o'clock to wish you luck for the surgery. I couldn't talk. I really couldn't communicate, but I remember thinking, they're not coming to wish me luck with surgery. They're coming to tell me goodbye, because I'm a realist, and I knew I was so sick. I was even sicker now than I was when I was put on the list in 2007, and I was much weaker. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to survive this. There's no way.
You were a high risk for what was already a high risk surgery.
Yeah.
Higher risk. So
all the family came to wish me luck and give me hugs and kisses. But I mean, I knew it was I felt like when I was hugging my son, it was the last time I was ever going to hug my son. And I remember my ex-husband, his dad was there. And we were on good terms, friendly, no problem. But I remember pleading with him when no one was in the room. I said, make sure you're there for Luke. Like, he needs you. And making sure, I was telling my nieces, make sure Luke goes to his first homecoming dance, because they were all in the same age. Make sure he gets first of everything, like a first time with a new car or first time going on a date. Like, I was begging with my sister, like, please make sure he has all these firsts. I didn't think I was going to come out of it. I really didn't. And with that, the doctor came in the room straight up at 8 o'clock, and I was whisked away for another long, like 12, 13-hour surgery. And I woke up in ICU, and I kind of remember, I was still on a ventilator. I was still waking up, but I really remember kind of pinching myself like, is this real? Like, I survived it. I was alive and I was thriving.
Now, this is what year, remind me?
This now is 2015, March 2nd, 2015.
So from 2015, you recover. I'm not making light of this at all by any stretch of the imagination, but I needed to, start moving along with the visit here. So 2015 to 2021, relatively normal life, other than the, anti-rejection drugs I'm sure you're taking.
I take those every day, 12 hours apart, 8 o'clock in the morning when I brush my teeth, 8 o'clock at night when I brush my teeth. In fact, in 2015, a few months after my transplant, I'd gotten a phone call from the organization Dancing for Big Buddy. And they asked me if I'd like to be star dancer in 2016. And I remember thinking, there's no way. Like, I literally was just transplanted a couple months ago. I could barely walk down the hallway. And then I really thought about it, and they were like, it's a year from now. It'll be like literally a year. It was April, a year later. And I said, no, I'm going to say yes, because this is going to give me incentive to get really healthy. And I did. And I danced with Leonard Augustus, and I wanted to prove that there was life after transplant, and there was. And I lived my life to the fullest, Johnny. I live each day like it is my last. I never take a single breath for granted. Every little thing I do, even if it's just going to the grocery store to buy food, like, I just take it all in and enjoy getting to pick out the carrots and the celeries and the onion for my soup, because you can't take life for granted. It is so short. And we are, but I do remember one last thing I did want to mention to you. I do remember after my transplant, being in the hospital in ICU, 2 days after my transplant, when my hepatic brain encephalopathy fog was beginning to lift, I remember asking my own self, like, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why do I have this disorder? Why am I've had 2 transplants. And then after a day or two of pondering and thinking about that, I thought, like, why not me? Maybe God. And I'm not a religious person, but I do have faith. And I am religious, but not over the top. But I remember thinking, why not me? Why not me? Maybe God is using me as a vessel to help others and spread organ donation awareness and talk to people and get rid of the myths that are out there about organ donation, and like talk to people, the real stuff that goes on behind donation, and get more people to sign up and say yes to organ donation. So that has been my mission. And I've been volunteering with LOPA as a public speaker since 2008. I'm also currently on the LOPA Foundation board, because I want to make life happen for thousands and thousands and thousands of people.
All because someone's had the forethought to put a little heart on their license and become an organ donor.
Yeah, and they had that conversation, that uncomfortable conversation with their family, and said yes to organ donation. And without that gift, I would not be alive today, and I wouldn't get to see my son, who's about to graduate from college. I turned 50 2 years ago. Heck, I never thought I'd see 50. Now I'm 52, and I mean, I've never been healthier, and I'm grateful, honestly.
Wendy Lipsey, your story is just amazing. Lori Steele and I have known each other for a long time through our professions. Broadcasting, I was on radio. She was on Channel 2 at the time and doing TV, and now she works for the Livingston Parish Sheriff Office for Jason Ard and the gang down there. But one of the things that she's passionate about and that she also does is she is the Communication Educator for the Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency, or LOPA. And Lori is going to be with us for a few minutes to kind of dispel some of the myths about becoming an organ donor. First of all, Lori, hello. Thank you for joining us this morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
No complaints at all. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your busy day. I know there's a lot going on in LP,
Yeah.
but you're managing all of that and managing the mayor and managing Jason Ard, and that's a tough job.
Keeps life interesting, for sure.
But you're also very passionate about something that Wendy Lipsey and I just talked about a few seconds ago, and what a great story she has, and she would not be alive for without organ donors, and you are the communication educator, if I'm not correct, from the Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency, LOPA. And I wanted to have you on, Lori. Thank you again for your time to dispel some of the myths about organ donations. You and I visited a few minutes last week, and I've heard people say crazy things like, if I'm in a car wreck and I'm near death, they're not going to save me because they're going to want to take my organs. So I'm not going to be an organ donor. And that is hogwash.
Yeah, a lot of people hear these myths and it scares them off. Number one, a lot of people don't want to talk about their death or the death of their children or their parents or anything like that. So LOPA focuses on education in Louisiana. So we go into churches, schools, whoever will listen to us really. But the number one main myth is what you just hit on. If I have a heart on my license, which if you say yes to donation at the OMV, you'll get a heart on your license, that they won't try to save your life. And that's simply not true. So we push learning the facts, educate yourself at lopa.org, and know that they will do everything possible to save you. And only if all of those have been tried and nothing works is donation even a possibility. And only in 2 to 3% of all deaths is it even possible. So learn the facts today and educate yourself.
Wait a minute, time out. In only 2 to 3% of all deaths is organ donation possible?
Yes, because you have to die of what's called brain death. And that is a traumatic injury to your brain. The brain swells. It can only go so far because of your skull. So there's no blood or oxygen going. So the brain begins to die. So that's not a coma. That's not a brain injury or anything like that. It's brain death. And your brain sends signals to tell your lungs to pump, to tell your heart to pump. And without your brain sending those signals, then that's your time of death. So you see these on those shows that are out there, your time of death, and they say it. At that point is when donation is possible if you die of what's called brain death. And that's something that's hard for a lot of people to start thinking about in the hospital setting. So that's why we try to educate outside of the hospital setting, and we want folks to just talk about it amongst themselves. Are you an organ donor? Why not? Let's learn the facts together.
That's fascinating. Yeah, Wendy and I were talking last week about, she said, now this is crazy. When a first responder comes up to a car wreck, they don't look at your license. They do everything in their power to save your life. So they don't even know if you're an organ donor, you know?
And we work with allied health students and new nurses, and they say, oh my gosh, we train to save lives, save lives, save lives. And so that myth really rubs a lot of people the wrong way. So that's why we try to push the facts and we try to educate as much as possible. So we have all of those facts at lopa.org. We even started a podcast to get people talking. A lot of people are into podcasting. It's called The Gifted Life. And so living donation, that's popular these days. So we cover that. Joey Gase, he does the NASCAR races, so he's into donation, so we talk to him. So we bring in partners from across the country and we talk about donation in a fun and educational setting.
Wow, fantastic. What are some of the other myths that you have had to dispel in your position with LOPA about organ donations? What could you tell someone that's on the fence about putting a heart on their driver's license?
Yeah, so some of the myths, a lot of people say, oh, I'm too old, or I'm on too many medications. So we say, don't rule yourself out because you don't know what shape you're in at the time of your death. And that's going to be up to those doctors, those people who do it every day. It used to be you couldn't be an organ donor if you had HIV, but now, thanks to the HOPE Act, if you die and you have HIV, you can give to someone and save a life, leave a legacy to someone who has HIV. So things are changing constantly. We know how to make life happen, and we want to do that. So we ask you to go out and learn the facts, take action, and you can ask for a speaker at lopa.org. We bring folks out like Wendy, the firecracker, and she tells you her story. We have folks who are 24 hours away from death, 72 hours away from death, and they are inspiring, right? So if I'm in traffic and I'm just like having a bad day, then I'll just call up Wendy or something. She's like, take a breather. Take it as a time to meditate or do something fun. So they really give you a new perspective on life. So we just ask that you educate yourself and talk to your family for sure.
Yeah, that's a very sensitive topic for a lot of folks, and understandably so. But like Wendy, her second transplant involved a liver and a kidney from the same donor, which brings up the questions, how many lives could possibly be saved with one human body?
Yeah, so one person has the power to save up to 8 lives. So you can donate heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, small intestine. You can enhance the lives of up to 50 plus, and you can give sight to 2. So it is a big decision. We want it to be your decision. If something were to happen to you today, then we have to ask your next of kin, do you want them making that decision for you? We wish that you would make that decision and give that gift of life today.
Real quick, how can we get to the LOPA information so that we can read more about what organ donation involves?
Yeah, so LOPA.org is a one-stop shop. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube. Like I said, we also have the podcast. It's called The Gifted Life. So thegiftedlife.org or any of your favorite podcast apps. They can call you to get in touch with Wendy, and I'm sure she'd like to go out there as well. So we do free presentations. There's a lot of people who are waiting across the country. So it's over 100,000. In Louisiana, it's 2,000. So keep those numbers in mind and know that in Louisiana, we're South Louisiana. So 2.5 million people have said yes. Our goal is to reach the other half of the population, and you can help us right there. If you're on the fence, call us, let us talk to you. We'll bring folks that have been touched by donation and they want to help you learn.
Fantastic. You're such a great spokesperson for Livingston Parish and for LOPA. If there's anything we can help you with at LOPA with volunteering and getting the word out, I guess the biggest thing, and I said this in the beginning of the program about the COVID vaccine, don't get talked out of it by Grey's Anatomy, or don't get talked out of it by people that have never had, don't have a medical degree. Get educated by professionals that know what they're talking about, and then make an informed decision, a prayerful decision with your family, right?
Yeah. And then there's a fun fact. We created a Donate Life Hollywood. So we talk about some of these misconceptions that show up in the movie sometimes that make for great TV. They're just not accurate. And so what we're doing is we have folks who are working with Hollywood to get those stories more accurate that are out there, which is pretty neat. So there's an app out there, and if you see something inaccurate, you can send that in, and hopefully we'll start changing that narrative.
Lori Steele, thank you so much for your time, and have a fantastic rest of the week.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Well, that'll do it for another edition of Asian Nation on this Tuesday, the 4th of May. Tomorrow, Cinco de Mayo. Be safe if you're out and about enjoying that. Join us 1 week from today, next Tuesday at 10 a.m. for Asian Nation live from our brand new studios that they're building. We'll be out of the Zoom room and back into our studio, so we're excited to kind of tour that with you and show you the high-tech stuff we have to play with. Also, if you are so inclined, go get vaccinated. Don't be afraid. Make an informed decision. Talk to your doctor. And also get more information on the organ procurement and becoming an organ donor if you are not already. Otherwise, I will see you next week at 10 o'clock Tuesday on Asian Nation. And tomorrow morning, bright and early, or dark and early, if you will, 4:30 a.m. until 9 for WAFB's 9 News this morning. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your Tuesday.